For this video, I want to share my experiences of keeping one of my betta fish in the same tank as my chili Rasboras. Rather than trying to show zoomed in clips, I'm just going to be using as many wide angle video clips as possible so you can see how the two species interact with each other in a 12-gallon rectangle tank. So starting with betta fish selection, and this particular betta fish is called Khuli. He's a long-tailed betta and I've had him for around 7 months now. Here's some clips from his original tank, but until recently he was in his own separate aquarium where he had a couple of shrimp and some nerite snails to keep him company. I know that betta fish have a reputation for being aggressive, but Khuli has always been calm and relaxed in his aquarium and he seems to enjoy watching all of his tank mates. He loved to watch the shrimp in his old tank, and I've sat and watched him do this countless times for hours and hours and hours, and I've never once seen him try to eat a shrimp in his aquarium. Unfortunately, that original aquarium I used to keep him in had some issues maintaining stable water parameters, so around 6 weeks ago I decided to move him over into this tank with my chili Rasboras. The point I'm trying to make with this is that Khuli is not a brand new betta fish that I've just purchased from a shop. I've had him for months and months and months in a different tank, and I've watched him countless times act peacefully and calmly around shrimp, which can easily be eaten by a betta fish. I would never recommend that you try this with a brand new betta fish from a shop because all 3 of my betta fish have had very different personalities to each other, and I'm pretty sure my first betta fish Skittles would have tried to eat every chili Rasbora if I put them in the same tank. So back to clips from the current aquarium setup where the betta fish is kept with my chili Rasboras, and I want to move on to the actual setup of the tank. As you can see, there's plenty of sight breaks in this tank, so the chili Rasboras can easily get away and hide somewhere in here if needed. There's plenty of Rotala rotundifolia in the back of the aquarium, and my Christmas moss in this tank is so overgrown that it essentially makes a huge curtain in the middle of the tank so that it splits it into 2 different halves. There's also various types of crypt planted throughout the right hand side of the tank, and there's this Echinodorus aquatica that provides plenty of cover as well if needed. In addition to that, Khuli is a long-tail betta, so he's nowhere near as fast as a short-tail placat or a spade-tail when it comes to chasing prey, so if needed, my chili Rasboras have plenty of time to react and get away from him. As you'll see with these clips, thankfully this hasn't been an issue, and Khuli just likes to swim to a place where he can lean on the plants in the tank and relax while he watches what the chili Rasboras get up to. That said, my chili Rasboras have always decided to just randomly school around the tank regardless of their tank mates, and I think Khuli does get a little frustrated when they do this, so he just swims off to the right hand side of the tank and watches my other betta fish Stitch in the tank that's next to him. I really don't know why, but this little guy just seems to be fascinated by watching other living things, and I've seen him do it for hours without being aggressive to anyone or even flaring. So this tank is a 12-gallon rectangle, and my chili Rasboras tend to prefer to stick to the left hand side of the tank near the Rotala rotundifolia plant cover, regardless of if Khuli's close to them or on the complete other side of the tank. As you can see in some of these clips, on occasion some of the chili Rasboras will swim within an inch or 2 of Khuli and he just doesn't react, he just keeps on watching them to try and work out what they're doing. So moving on to water parameters, and thankfully there's plenty of water parameter crossover between these 2 species, so it's actually been pretty easy to keep them both in the same aquarium. I try to keep this aquarium's water temperature at around 81 degrees Fahrenheit or 27 degrees Celsius, so that is towards the upper range for chili Rasboras, but it is still within their recommended safe water temperature range. The current pH range of this tank is usually around the 6.7 mark, but it does fluctuate slightly both up and down depending on the time of day and if there's recently been a water change, but that's still within the recommended parameters for both species of fish. This tank did used to be my primary guppy tank, so it's been set up for around a year now. That means that the filter media in here is established and contains all the colonies required to maintain ammonia and nitrite at 0 ppm, and the plants in here help to keep nitrate as low as possible. I also do regular partial water changes in this aquarium too, and there doesn't seem to be any issues with water parameters at all. This is important to factor in because I've seen other people say that even slightly increased ammonia and nitrite levels can irritate the fish and increase their aggression levels, but that isn't an issue with this setup. I want to touch on how I added the fish to this tank as well, and I didn't actually plan to make this video, so I don't have any clips of the initial fish being added. Originally this tank was set up to house my guppies, but I recently upgraded them to my 29-gallon tank. The same day I moved my guppies up to that tank, I moved my chili rasboras and a honey gourami over to this one, so there was a constant bio load in the tank. The honey gourami have since been moved up to my 40-gallon tank, and I was toying with the idea of getting more chili rasboras for this tank. Unfortunately, the Ludwigia Mini Super Red started to fail in Khuli's old tank, constantly causing problems with the water parameters, so I just decided to move him over to this tank because it seemed like the safest option. The chili rasboras were in this tank for weeks before Khuli moved over, but I have seen people online saying that adding the betta fish last can help with issues with perceived territories in the aquarium. I'm really not sure how much of a difference that would make because Khuli has always been laid back and peaceful in his aquariums, but I just wanted to mention it in this video if you are thinking of trying something like this. So moving on to feeding, and this has actually been far easier than I thought it would be. Chili rasboras are absolutely tiny fish and they struggle with most of the fish food products that I have for the other species I keep in my other aquariums. Due to this, I use NT Labs microcrumb food for my chili rasboras because these granules are very small and my chili rasboras absolutely love them. I've seen Khuli get close to their food multiple times, but for some reason he just doesn't try and eat it. I don't know if he thinks it's too small for him or if he knows that I'll be adding his pellets soon or if he just doesn't like the flavour, but my point is there's no real food aggression here because the betta fish doesn't really like the food I give the chili rasboras. Khuli gets fluval bug bites in NT Labs Nanotropical for his meals and their granule size is far too big for the chili rasboras, so it's not like they're trying to steal food from him either. Both of the NT Labs products that I use in this tank have slightly different formulas too, so Khuli the betta fish might just not like the taste of the food that I add for the chili rasboras because he could easily fit their food in his mouth if he wanted. I just want to end the video by giving a quick talkthrough of some of these clips because things like where I feed the betta fish and plant locations and stuff like that all come into play on how they interact. This clip is probably one of the best ones that I have because Khuli doesn't actually realise I'm near the aquarium right away. I often see him on the rotala rotundifolia towards the back of the tank and he just rests on that and watches the chili rasboras swimming around and playing. As you can see, the chili rasboras start to move towards the right hand side of the tank and Khuli decides to reposition himself to get a better view. Then he notices that I'm near the tank and beelines directly towards me expecting food and pays no attention to the chili rasboras that he basically swims right through. This is another common thing that I see when I sit next to the tank because Khuli sees me sat there and he expects food, and usually I feed him in the floating plant ring to prevent the water flow pushing his food around the aquarium. That's why he's looking at the ring in the tank a couple of times through this video because he's expecting me to feed him because I'm recording near the tank. I would guess that a large number of betta fish wouldn't act like this, but as you can see, Khuli is more interested in me giving him his food rather than trying to catch his little tank mates and eat them. This last clip is a combination of the previous two. As you can see, Khuli is expecting food, but he does end up working out that he's not actually getting anything and he's already been fed, so he decides to swim off and watch his tank mates. You can see that he swims right through the shoal of chili rasboras directly through the middle of them without trying to bite them in any way, and the chili rasboras don't react. The chilies just keep doing their thing and Khuli rests on the rotala rotundifolia and just watches them swimming around. As I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't recommend you try this with a brand new betta fish that you've just bought from the shop. I had Khuli for months before I moved him over to this aquarium, and I've honestly lost count of the number of hours I've sat watching his aquarium, and I've never ever seen him act aggressively to the shrimp in that tank. Anyway guys, that brings the video to an end. Hopefully it was helpful. Thanks for watching and have a good day.